My name is Don LaFont, Professor Don, and this week in our A+ software class, we are covering Chapter 17, OS X and Linux, covering both of those operating systems in one module because they take up about 10% of all operating systems. So we're not giving them as much time as we gave Windows, the 3 versions of Windows that we went in depth with previously. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And start the presentation. And one more thing I have to do here. I have to do this. A couple things to get ready here. Please be patient. If during my presentation you have any questions and you're here with me live, please ask your questions at the end of the presentation. I'll give you a moment after we're done with the presentation to ask questions that affect more people. If you are here with me watching as a recording inside of our classroom, Canvas Classroom, please ask under the help discussion forums. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please welcome to my channel. I appreciate it. Hopefully this video will be helpful to you. Please ask questions down below in the comments sections, and I swing by every now and then answer those questions. I love to see you guys interacting though, so please feel free to answer each other's questions as well. Now, I am going to say at the beginning of this presentation that I am not going to teach you an in-depth lesson on how to use OS X or how to use Linux. This is a broad overview. We're covering 2 operating systems that you could easily spend 15 weeks on in either operating system. I've actually recently taken a 15-week Linux class just to get a little bit more understanding under my belt, but also you could just find videos online. There's one great starter video by Geeks Lesson. Look for GEEK lesson on YouTube. Geeks Lesson, and yeah, it's about 3.5 hours, and it does a pretty good overview of Linux to get you started. So this may just be a tease. Who knows? You might be a Linux guru before you know it. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with soft skills. We're going to talk about being humble. Well, I'm going to introduce you to OS X. We're going to talk about basic system usage, updates, and backups. I'll talk about management and troubleshooting as well. Now, quality is a good technician. These are the soft skills that you need to be more than just a nerd helping somebody fix their computer. And what this one tip about being humble is important. You need to be confident that you can repair most anything and figure things out, but avoid arrogance. You cannot know everything. It's impossible. You may know a little bit about a lot of things or a lot of bit about a specific thing, but very few people know a lot about a lot of things. I often talk about how you can divide computing into networking, programming, hardware, software, and when you take all 4 of those areas, very few people program in 5 different languages and build their computers from scratch in either the Intel world or AMD, and know how to use every single software that's ever been existed, and know how to let's see, I got hardware, I got software, use all the software, build the computers, network computers together, and program. Those are the 4 major tasks. Very few people know everything about everything. It's just not possible. There's too much to know. And once you get to that point, everything changes. So realize you don't know everything. Show a little humility and be humble with your knowledge. Avoid boasting about your knowledge and expertise over those that you support. And showing empathy for people that you support and interact with goes a long way. When you sit, there's this one woman that I tutor on a regular basis, And when she took a CGS 1100 Microsoft Applications course, she didn't know how to double click a mouse. She didn't know how to use a mouse. But literally, I was running along with click this, click that, click this, click that. She was stuck on how do I click. She dropped that class, but I've tutored her to the point now where she actually, I think, can actually use computers pretty successful to the point where now she's trying to, add to her system. She's, asking me to put in a K, what is it, a K, the switch that allows you to switch between two different monitors and keyboards and mice. I have one monitor switch, KVR, I think, KVR switch. Somebody can help me in the chat room, tell me if that's right. And she's also, experimenting with lots of things on her phone, which of course is a computer. KVM, thank you, I appreciate that. And she's getting really good considering where she came from. She's moved along quite well. Think about when you learned computers, right? That first day you sat in front of a computer, you did not know everything there was to know about a computer. It's taken you years to get to where you are. If you started with a tablet in your crib, it still took you years to get where you are. So just remember that everybody is at a different point when it comes to computer knowledge. The better you can gauge where they are and speak to them at their level will help you to be a better technician. Remember to be humble. OS X. So OS X, pronounced OS 10. Yeah, well, I call it OS X. Most people I know call it OS X. But you might hear it called OS 10, is a Unix-based operating system that was developed by Apple for its Macintosh line of computers called Mac. I actually used Linux back in the day when I went to college. Okay, I'm aging myself a little bit, but that was the major computer we used. We had to share time on the Unix-based computer. So some of the commands were familiar with Mac, but Macintosh, of course, today is much more advanced than it was when I used that version of Linux now more than 20 years ago. It's the most used type of Linux-based desktop operating system. Now, OS X has a core of Linux. We'll talk about that a little later. Linux was built off of Unix, and OS X is based off of Unix. OS X and Linux are two different operating systems, but they both are forks, if you will, from the Unix operating system. OS X utilizes many open source projects to make up the core and functionality of the operating systems, along with the touch of Apple's own customization. Open source software is software made freely available and open to outside contribution to improve. Now Apple itself, the OS X software is not open source and it is not open to be modified. You can make suggestions on Apple forums, but you cannot go in and modify the Apple operating system. Not true. You cannot do that. But when you're looking for free software online, adding open source software, say Undelete, will take you to software that is open source. Basically, software that has lots of people working to make it better. OS X is renowned for its intuitive and easy to learn graphic user interface, GUI, that has multiple ways to interact with it, from the standard mouse and keyboard to more advanced trackpad multi-touch gestures. There are four basic elements to the GUI of OS X. There's the dock, the finder, the menu bar, and the right side shortcuts. I've got a picture of each one of those to let you see how the GUI is laid out. So the dock is down here at the bottom. It's the shortcut organizational bar used for launching software and managing applications. It's actually really cool to watch how the dock on an Apple computer works. It's much more fun than the taskbar on a Windows computer. It interacts with you as you work with the Windows, but it shows you the open programs and what you have pinned to your dock. The Finder, which is the file manager included in OS X, is used for navigating and managing files and folders in the filing system. Sort of like you opening a Windows box, the yellow Windows folder in a Windows computer. And once you click on Finder, this window opens up and it shows you all of the programs based by category. So when you click, say, on applications, you see all the applications. You hit desktop, you see what's on your desktop. You hit documents and downloads and my files. You can navigate a little bit like you do in a Windows environment. Now the menu bar is anchored to the top of the screen and is dynamically it is a dynamically changing bar that presents contextual drop-down menu options on the left side depending on which window is active. So the one interesting thing with OS X is that it has two menus. It has a menu within a menu. So here's one menu. Let me turn on let's see if I can turn on my, turn on my laser pointer. So here we go. So you have one menu that deals with top level, if you will, and then you have another menu that deals with the program that's currently open. You can see this menu here. Depending on the menu the program that's open, this menu will change, as will this menu. It's contextual based on what is currently active. So if anybody remembers the old Windows 8, it was really not 8.1 but 8 with the corners. It was this contextual drop down type style where you clicked in the corner and it dropped a menu based on the page that was currently open. So it was really confusing that very first weekend for me because the menu kept changing. I would think I would figure out the software, and then 5 minutes later it looked different. Well, it looked different because the menu changed based on what I currently had open. That's kind of true with OS X as well. Navigating the user interface, the right side provides shortcuts to things like connecting to Wi-Fi, networking, or changing volume. In this case, accessing your hard drive. And here they show you the what am I supposed to show you on this window? Applications, dock, hard drive. I think we talked about everything. I wonder why this slide is here. Okay, that's just an overview. Again, there's lots of different versions of of Apple OS X and their updates. And everyone's going to look a little different, always trying to improve the user interface. Now, basic system usage, updates and backups. OS X comes bundled with a wide range of software for general usage as well as system upkeep. iWork, for example, is Apple's Office productivity suite. It includes a word processor called Pages, a presentation program called Keynote, spreadsheet called Numbers. I love the name Numbers, right? Excel. What's Excel? I don't know what Excel is, but you can pretty much guess what Numbers is, right? The problem that I've had with these programs is they're not always compatible. For example, if you save a document in a Pages format, it doesn't open automatically in a Microsoft Office format. So you have to pay attention that your computer, when you're working with OS X on an Apple computer, only about 8% of the world's computers are Apple computers, Apple operating system. So if you're saving in a Pages format and you're sending it to a Microsoft user, they may not be able to, Microsoft Word user, they may not be able to open that. Same thing's true with Keynote. Other useful bundled applications include Mail, Safari, that's the browser that comes built into the OS X operating system, Calendar, Contacts, Phones, and so on. Lots of really powerful programs that are installed. OS X also comes with iCloud, a cloud-based service offering storage, application support, and syncing of contacts, photos, emails, bookmarks, documents, and more between multiple OS X, iOS, and even Windows devices. Now, that's the one thing that I'm jealous. I've been a Windows user from the beginning, and I am very jealous of iCloud because there's nothing really like it between using a phone, they kind of tried it with the Windows operating system and a phone, but your Windows environment, whether you're using Windows 7, 8, or 10, doesn't automatically interact with your smartphone. And if you're not using an Apple operating system, it doesn't operate. Hang on a second. It doesn't operate in an Android phone. Google, through the Google service, kind of sort of tries to make it work, but it's just not as easy as using iCloud, where it's all just built-in compatibility, where you take a picture, it's everywhere. You write a document, it's everywhere. I actually really am envious of OS X and iCloud for that reason. Management and troubleshooting tools. OS X comes with a robust set of tools to keep the system running smoothly. The most basic tool is the System Preference menu. The System Preference is equivalent to the control panel in Windows. The System Preferences shortcut by default is located on the dock, listed in the Launchpad. And the utilities that are built into the operating system include Open Finder, select the include management, maintenance, and troubleshooting. To find it, open Finder, select the application section on the left side of the bar, and then go to the utilities folder. And you can see all sorts of really cool utilities here, including, let me zoom in a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. You can see it better, including set activity monitor, setting up your Bluetooth, setting up boot camp where you have multiple operating systems running on the same computer, setting your color, setting your disk utility to troubleshoot your hard drive. You can kind of see many of them are very similar to your control panel, system information. And then going to a DOS prompt. Well, it's not DOS, it's a Unix prompt. But you can go to a terminal window, which is common between, which is similar to a command line interface in Windows. Okay. Sharing a Mac screen. If another user has screen sharing turned on, another Mac user can view and even control the display of another Mac computer that is on the network. Open Finder, look for the computers that have sharing enabled in the shared section. Hover the pointer over the word shared and then select show. Selecting a particular computer and select share screen. Anyways, so that's pretty easy to do. Sharing your screen is a pretty neat feature. System updates and Time Machine. I love Time Machine. It's actually a little bit better than setting a restore point. But anyway, I'll get there in a moment. System updates. The App Store is how Apple releases patches and updates for OS X. Check the Updates tab in the App Store from time to time to get the latest operating system and application updates. Just like Windows, when you're troubleshooting a problem, it's always best to start with the most up-to-date software. Previously purchased applications can be recovered through the App Store, but it is not a backup system. In other words, if you have the applications that you've purchased, you can always go in and download them again, but make sure that you have your specific settings, right? When you download the app a second time, it's going to, and reinstall it, it's not going to have your personalization and your settings Time Machine is a bundled application in OS X that enables you to do full and incremental system backups to an external hard drive. Best thing about it is once you set it, you can forget it. And if you ever need to go back in time to a previous installation, previous version, you got a virus, something went wrong with your computer, it's flawless. So you just step back in time. I love the term, and it actually works. It works fantastic. As compared to setting a restore point in a Windows environment where often, or at least sometimes, you'll forget to set the restore point before you install new software, and it doesn't do it automatically, and then you want to uninstall, but you realize the previous restore point was a week ago or worse. And then so you're losing a lot of things instead of just the last 5 minutes from when you install the new program. So always try to remember to create a restore point, then you don't have that problem. Time Machine works great though. Force Quit. OS X is a stable operating system that rarely crashes or requires you to use a backup to recover anything. When a program stops responding or working properly, it may require a Force Quit feature. To access the Force Quit menu, either click the Apple icon on the top left of the screen and then select Force Quit, or hold down the Command option and Escape keys at the same time. A menu appears allowing you to choose which application you want to quit. Remote disk. Macs do not have an Macs do not have an optical CD DVD drive. Macs have the option to plug in an external USB optical drive, but that isn't always possible. In this instance, OS X has a remote disk feature. Remote disk is what enables you to remotely use the optical drive of another Mac or even a Windows-based PC. And today we rarely use the CD-DV drive on a Windows PC, but you'll want to be aware of remote disk when you go to take the A+ certification. It may ask you about how to load programs, applications if you don't have a CD-DVD drive, and the answer is remote disk. Management and troubleshooting tools. The most basic tool in the system. The most basic tool is the System Preferences menu. System Preferences is the equivalent to the control panels in Windows. It contains most of the system settings such as desktop backgrounds and screensavers. The System Preferences shortcut by default is located on the dock, listed under Launchpad, or you can find it through the Finder. And you can read through these as well. I'll zoom in a little bit to make it a little bit easier. Here we have general dock, control what's on the dock, mission control, security, notifications, display settings, keyboard, mouse, trackpad, ink for drawing on the screen. Here we can control our iCloud, internet accounts, network settings, extensions that have been installed, sharing, like we were talking about sharing earlier, users, date and time, startup disk, and Time Machine, just to name a few. Remote Activity Monitor. Activity Monitor is a tool used to see what processes and services are running, plus what system resources are used. It's sort of like going to the Task Manager, Control-Alt-Delete in Windows computer, and you open up the Task Manager and you can go to see system activity. CPU tab shows what is consuming the most of the CPU processing power. The Memory tab shows how much RAM is being used by each process. And the Disk tab shows a breakdown of how much disk read, write, I/O is occurring. Console. A centralized place to find system and application logs and messages. OS X and the applications running on it constantly send activity logs to the console. The console lets you parse these manually or by searching for a specific something. System information is a utility that provides an overview of the Mac, including basic diagnostics information such as installed hardware, software, and network settings. And it's accessed from the utilities directory or by clicking the Apple icon in the upper left corner of the menu bar. Keychain Access. Keychain Access is a utility for securely managing saved passwords. Passwords are then encrypted by default with the password for the user account that they are saved under. A common problem occurs when a user updates his process when logged on and the keychain asks for his keychain password. A useful feature of the Keychain Access utility is able to see saved passwords. Obviously, if you have the password to sign into the keychain, you can see the saved passwords, but you have to remember that keychain password. And the problem is when you forget your keychain password, you can't see those passwords that are stored. Disk Utility. Disk Utility is an application that handles the management of disks and images in OS X. This utility can be used to rename, reformat, erase, repair, and restore disks. It is a powerful tool and should be approached with caution because the wrong usage could delete all of the data on the system or on an external disk attached to the system. When it asks you if you really want to delete or format the drive, you need to really know whether you want to lose everything you have on that drive. vBoot. Bootcamp is a bootloading utility designed to assist with partitioning, installing, and support of running Windows on a Mac. I've used many Mac computers with Windows also installed, and it runs really well. The college used to have several Mac labs, and thankfully for me, since I'm not a Mac person, they had Boot Camp running on all of them, and you would just boot to Windows, and then it would act like a Windows computer. Now, it doesn't work the other way. You can't install Mac on a Windows computer. Mac does not allow that, but Windows does. Installation requires a US flash drive with at least 16 gigabit of space, a Windows installation ISO file, or a DVD installer, and a minimum of 30 gigabits of free space on the hard drive. The Boot Camp application guides you through the process of repartitioning your hard drive to make the partition labeled Boot Camp. Boot Camp can also be used to remove a Windows partition. So you go into Boot Camp to delete the Windows partition if you no longer want it running on that Mac computer. Actually, at least in one a college classroom, we had Boot Camp running on it, and they just couldn't get it to work flawlessly. So they actually erased the Windows partition, and we all had to figure out how to use a Mac for the first time. First time I ever used a Mac in my life. I've used a few over the years. I'm not fond of it. Again, it's like making a decision. Are you a Nike guy or a Reebok guy? You just make a decision. Or are you a tennis girl or are you a football girl? I don't know. You make your decision of what you're really into, and then you go with it. I personally am a Windows person, but you need to understand enough about a Mac computer to be able to navigate around it and to help troubleshoot that Mac space. You don't want to have to go to and ask the user that's having a problem to show you the basic usage of the Mac operating system. I remember when I first walked into that lab on the college campus and it had a Windows drive, the first thing I asked was, were there any students in the classroom that had a Mac or knew how to use a Mac? And thankfully, I had somebody able to show me how to get everything up and running. It was different. Even the computer itself was different. There was no big case on the floor. The Mac computer in the classroom, everything was built into the monitor. This was maybe 12 years ago, and it was very unusual. I'm looking around for the case with the DVD drive and the hard drive and CPU and motherboard. Couldn't find it anywhere. And I asked, and when the students arrived, I was like, hey, how do you turn this thing on? And somebody showed me the button on the back of the monitor. It's like, yeah, but where's the computer? Anyways, you don't want that to be your experience in front of a user, right? Talk about being humbled or being humbled. All right, that's OS X. Let's talk about Linux a little bit. Linux is an operating system or kernel. Remember, we talked about what a kernel is, that it allows the user to interact with the hardware. The user interacts with the kernel talks to the hardware. It is distributed under an open source license. Its functionality list is quite like Unix. Who created it? Well, Linux is an operating system or kernel which germinated as an idea in the mind of young and bright Linus Torvald when he was a computer science student. He used to work on Unix OS, which is proprietary, and thought that it needed improvements. However, when he suggested his suggestions were rejected by the designers of Unix, he just thought about launching an OS which will be receptive to change, modifications suggested by its users, and hence the birth of Linux, right? Should I use it then? Well, yeah, it's sort of important for you to be able to use Linux because, again, the Linux operating system is the operating system that most corporate servers run on. So you won't have an option not to use Linux. And why is that the truth? It's the truth because the Linux is free. There's many distros, but Linux is free and Windows is not. So Windows Server, whatever year version you have, costs a lot of money to companies. And of course, companies are always trying to save money. So the Linux operating system is free or generally free, depending on what distro. Red Hat, for example, you can actually buy that distro, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about navigating the user interface. There are many types of graphical user interfaces for Linux, such as GNOME, KDE, XFace, and Cinnamon. Utility is the name of the graphical user interface in Ubuntu. Unity is the name of the graphical user interface in Ubuntu. By clicking the Ubuntu icon in the top of the launcher, a menu allows the local search on the system, as well as the ability to get results from the internet. Nautilus is a file manager for Ubuntu and can quickly be accessed by clicking the file icon on the launcher docks. By the way, these are all called distros. They're different distributions of the Unix, the Linux operating system. Remember, it's open source, so people make changes. When they make changes, if they really want to make something that's completely different, they just literally make a new distro, and then that distro gets downloaded onto a user computer, and then they move forward with it. And you can use different distros depending on how cutting edge a company wants to be. If companies generally don't want to be cutting edge, so they won't take a distro that changes often. They'll choose a distribution of the operating system that changes only after changes have been ironed out in some of the more cutting edge distros. Basic system usage, updates, and backups. The best example of a tool that is commonly used through the GUI is gparted. Gparted is a disk management tool that allows the creation, deletion, and resizing of partitions on a physical disk. Gparted has an easy-to-use drag-and-drop feature for partition management that is far easier to visualize and understand than trying to manage positions from the command line. When installing Linux or partitioning with gparted, be aware of the options. Most distros, including Ubuntu, which I've actually installed and used myself, default to using a file system known as X4. the fourth extended file system, an improvement on X3, and I would suspect X2 and X1, which was the most widely used file system for many years. OS X and Linux best practices. Keep best practices as follows. Perform scheduled backups, backing up the operating system and important data on a regular basis. As an IT staff member, you should gently remind users of this as well. Schedule disk maintenance. Disks become fragmented over time. For best system performance, perform disk maintenance on a regular basis. System updates. Be sure to install the latest operating systems updated for security and performance reasons. OS X and Linux best practices continued. Driver, make sure you install the latest and greatest driver and firmware updates. Ensure the latest hardware drivers and firmwares are installed to make sure that you're using the most secure and I'm losing the word here, secure and stable versions of the operating system. Patch management. Patches are code changes that tend to fix a particular problem in an operating system or application. Patch management is the process of downloading, testing, installing, restarting, retesting, and documenting these changes. Patch management helps with security too. We're going to talk about that in Chapter 18. Antivirus, anti-malware. Many people believe that Apple computers and Linux-based computers do not need antivirus or anti-malware. This is not true. Not only should they be installed, but they also need to receive updates on a regular basis. For many years, people believed Apple computers were virus-free, but that was because they only garnished about 5% of computers worldwide. If you have the choice of writing a virus for any reason, some sort of malware, do you want to write it for the operating system that's 95% of the world uses, or do you want to take your time to write it for the 5% that they don't use? Just recently, there was some major Apple viruses, or at least the ability of people to hack into Apple computers, and they were quickly squashed, but still, it is possible, so you need to be prepared for that. There are computer terms at the end of the glossary. Hopefully you guys guys and gals, have purchased the book. This is the 7th issue. Picture the 7th issue, but it should be the 8th issue. That's the one we're using in class. I switched up PowerPoints from an older version that I had done some work on. So anyways, by now you've seen the right book. It's the same name, same author. It's just the 8th edition, soon to be the 9th edition, which we're going to in August, later in the end of August, when we start the fall term here at the college I teach at. And that is that for tonight's presentation. Again, I told you earlier that I wasn't going to go deep into any of these programs, either of these programs, I should say. And the reason for that is because there's just so much to know. As I mentioned earlier, one of the students recommended a video from Geek's lesson. It's 3.5 hours long, just to give you an intro to Linux. If you got a moment, go take a look at that video, and or any other video that can I watched a 15 video series when I was preparing and learning Linux, and those 15 weeks, every week it got a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper, until I understood where I probably went further than I need to know to pass A+. And when you get out to it was easy for me to say, when I get out to production, I'll learn more of Linux. But remember, you have to get through the interview, and they are going to ask you in your interview if you're familiar with Linux. They probably won't ask you if you know Macs unless they have Macs, and then you do have to know Macs. If you're going to be troubleshooting on a daily basis, you need to know Macs. But Linux, again, very common for the servers to be running Linux. So you have to have knowledge of Linux, the Linux operating system, at least the basics. And as I suggested to my class before the presentation, find an old laptop that you have sitting in a closet someplace. That's what I did. I had an old Windows 95 laptop that I had retired probably 10 years ago because it was too slow. I loaded the Ubuntu distro on that laptop, and the laptop was fantastic. It was fast. It was working great because it has less requirements. System resource uses less system resources than Windows. Windows is pretty bloated with lots of stuff. Go look at what system tasks are running in the background of Windows. You'll be shocked, right? Control Alt Delete System. Anyways, but I loaded Ubuntu onto that laptop, and it was fantastic. It made it feel like the laptop was brand new. And then I ran through a lot of the labs on real equipment, the labs that we're going to do in this class. I did them on real equipment, and I went ahead and downloaded some labs online as well, just to be able to install onto the laptop some programs and see how they ran in Linux instead of in Windows. And I feel much more comfortable about people asking me questions about Linux now. All right, so that's the end of tonight's presentation. If you have any questions and you are with me, you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions in just a couple minutes. If you are watching this as a recording inside of our classroom, please go ahead and ask questions if you have any in the help discussion forums. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully this video has been helpful for you, at least as a starting point for both Linux and OS X. And go ahead and make any comments down below. I appreciate your comments. Please like and subscribe, and even click on that notification icon so that you can be notified when I release more videos. It's been my pleasure teaching you today. I hope you have a great day and a great week learning Linux and OS X. All right, take care.